It's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the state capital, Sacramento. We are joined today by Mike Gipson. He is a member of the California State Assembly. And sir, California continues to be on alert, both literally and metaphorically, as a result of the incidents in San Bernardino. And there's a long and large discussion going on about guns and access to guns. You represent some challenged communities in Los Angeles County. What are you hearing from your constituents about guns and whether we should protect more gun rights or create more gun control options?
Well, I'm hearing, because my ear's on the ground, one who's a father whose son was killed, although it was by a hit and run.
Okay.
But we belong to an organization called Justice for Murdered Children.
Right.
And so these are children that are dying, that are being killed on our streets of Los Angeles. So I hear firsthand from the parents who have to bury their son or daughter due to gun violence. I hear about the countless situations playing in the front yard, going down the street to the store to get milk or something of that nature, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm hearing those kind of incidences far too often. Mm-hmm. So people in my community want and demand gun control in not only our community, but also in the state of California.
What you're describing is different than, for example, the San Bernardino situation, which was a terrorist incident. But the reality is the common denominator is guns. And that's why this conversation proceeds to be so dominant in California and the nation. Recently, a field poll came out, and it asked Californians about their views on gun control versus gun rights. Mm-hmm. And one could say, not surprisingly, Californians continue to fall on the side of more gun control, 57% versus 38%. What I find so interesting is that if we've polled our friends in Texas, for example, it would probably be the exact opposite. And so here we are in California marching down a path of more gun control. For example, last year I believe we passed a piece of legislation that precludes concealed weapons on educational campuses, whereas Texas did the exact opposite, specifically allowing concealed weapons on educational campuses. This is a nation divided, sir, on guns.
Absolutely, and I think one of the real issues that speaks to that poll is that we still believe in our rights to bear arms, the Second Amendment, and I think that's possibly one of the reasons why that poll came out 57%. And I think that people still want to make sure that they have that constitutional right. But what we're talking about is being responsible. I think we need to put forth good gun legislation that makes it impossible for guns to fall in the hands of those individuals who seek to do harm, seek to do wrong, individuals who some have mental illnesses, individuals in a heat of passion have access to guns, individuals that are involved in gangs and drug trafficking, things of that nature where a gun is used and lives are lost. We must do something that we've never done before and trying to think outside the box and really get a handle on the situation.
But here's the challenge. We know with regard to the San Bernardino situation, for example, those guns we hear were likely obtained at a state. And we're not even a state where we're close to state boundaries per se. Like, you know, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, they're all on top of each other. I mean, San Bernardino is nowhere near Arizona and Nevada, and yet somehow we hear those guns came in from other states. So even if we have stricter gun laws, how is that going to help given a mobile society?
Well, I think, to be honest, is that what transpired in San Bernardino was a terrorist attack that had a methodical plan.
Right.
And what we're dealing with in Los Angeles County are individuals who are in gang wars, drug deals that are going bad, one set over another set that's taking innocent lives. And again, I think that once we get that under control by really putting forth good legislation that curtails guns being in the hands of individuals who seek to cause irreparable damage and catastrophic damage, then I think we will start seeing a decrease in some of these issues.
It's so interesting you bring this up because we as a nation are so focused on these mass shootings. You know, that's what's kind of propelled President Obama to engage in the conversation when he recently issued executive orders talking about Sandy Hook and Virginia Tech and San Bernardino. But day in and day out, in your assembly district, people are dying as a result of gun violence. And there are no headlines because it's not a mass shooting.
It's not a mass shooting. And that's why we have to make sure, again, we have good comprehensive gun control in California, because just as you said, we hear about the mass shootings. But what about the drive-by shootings?
Right.
What about some other incident where someone who has a mental illness will walk into a business establishment and just start shooting? We need to make sure that we have gun control that's going to safeguard lives in California.
So let's talk about your proposed legislation. It's one example of a piece of what you describe as smart, sensible legislation. It deals with the issue of ghost guns. What are ghost guns, sir?
Ghost guns are basically modified guns like assault weapons that will allow an individual to create something that is untraceable by law enforcement. In other words, guns that we have now have a serial numbers. These guns has no serial numbers.
Because? Are they removed?
No, because they're manufactured. These guns are actually changed to be modified so that it escapes and get around through a loophole that's in the law.
And this particular explain the loophole so we understand.
It's called a lower receiver. This lower receiver would take an assault weapon and it's modified where it will go up under the radar, law enforcement, and will not be able to trace it, and then those guns are used to do wrong, and that is taking innocent life. And so that's what we have to do, is close the loophole in California's law to prevent anything like that. Let me give you an example.
Please.
What transpired in Santa Monica in 2013, the gunman who took 6 innocent lives modified that particular weapon, and it became an assault weapon through the modification, through the lower receiver being modified. And those things are happening almost daily on the streets of Los Angeles. And through this bill will also prohibit manufacturers from taking place for people actually going around law to modify their particular gun to do assault weapon kinds of activities.
So where do you go from here? It is California, and as a general proposition, gun control legislation it can be successful, but there are Democrats who sometimes are queasy about gun control legislation. Even the governor has not been as willing to sign off willy-nilly on all gun control legislation. Do you feel as if this piece of legislation has legs?
I think the real reality is that technology is so advanced that you can get by and find a loophole that's in the law, and through this lower receiver and the modification of these guns, it bypassed law enforcement where it's undetectable. And so we have to make sure that we stay ahead of the technology, and one way of doing that is making sure that this is against the law and changing the definition so that the law will be very clear and it would apply to everyone, including lower receivers being modified on assault weapons.
So will your friends, your colleagues agree with you? Will the governor agree with you? Because look, even in California, gun control legislation, it's heated. Do you feel as if you can get this bill to move?
I believe that it's time. It's a national conversation that's taking place, not only in the White House, but also in San Bernardino, which just recently happened. I think gun control is a time right now where Democrats and Republicans have to stand up, one, to be recognized and be counted, and two, look at the reality. It's not safe until we can get our hands on it. We'll continue to have these things taking place in our community. Look at the mothers and fathers who are burying their children almost on a daily occurrences in California. These are children who won't have a future, innocent bystanders, grandmothers and fathers being at the wrong place at the wrong time. We must do something. And let me also say this, doing nothing is not acceptable.
His name is Mike Gipson. He is a member of the California State Assembly, representing significant portions of Los Angeles County. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're in Sacramento today, and this is Local Edition.